UConn's win over Villanova. To take a quote from Dan Hurley, can this win galvanize the Husky team and push them forward now with a tough stretch as St. John's approaches? You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just wanted to take a moment to say how thankful we are for all of you. We appreciate all of your support. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering UConn men's and women's basketball, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. To show that gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to UConn games. Can't wait to write that check at the end of the month to Kevin Solomon and the boys. Again, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right. Let's bring in, I haven't had Dan on the show in a while. It feels like it's been a long time. Dan Meehan, owner, founder, Exit 68, and my co-host on most Tuesdays and Thursdays. All right, Dan, I was there in a rare twist of fate. I'm in the building and you're not. It's kind of like it was kind of like an opposite day, right? But it was my first time in Hartford in probably 26 years, something like that. Not much has changed about the building, but the energy in the building was low initially. And I'm gonna address something, and then I'll ask you a question. For those of you who were like, "Oh man, the crowd was so small initially," it's like it's a 6:30 game on a Tuesday. Apparently, there's a ton of traffic. Like Sam Calhoun, who I sat next to the entire game, he even showed up late, and he's a reporter. He's like rushing in from campus. So, take that with a grain of salt. The energy ended up being great. Give me your first initial thought of this game.
Yeah, that 6:30 p.m. start time in Hartford gets a little log jam traffic wise. People getting out of work for that start time. But yeah, again, UConn goes down at the half against a lesser Villanova team. Last thing you want to do is get swept in a season series against Kyle Neptune. Glad that wasn't the case. They get the comeback. But yeah, this has kind of been the story for UConn lately. Their past 6-8 game stretch, they're just having duds of first halves. They're not coming out strong, assertive. Even with Liam McNeeley back, they've just had a tough time getting going. At home more so. They're playing against some teams like Seton Hall and Villanova. On the bottom half of the Big East standings, and they're just not starting great. This team does not have the luxury anymore. We're more than 3/4 of the way through the season. We don't have the luxury anymore of using the excuse of not having the personnel or not
Right.
or playing against some greater competition. They've got to start better, and that's up to them. Like Dan Hurley can say in these media availabilities and pressers that he needs the crowd. You got to show up and you got to be loud. This team needs to show up themselves, and this is another first half in which they did not do so, but luckily this team just fights and fights, and they play until the end, and they did that in this game, and thankfully came away with the win because they needed it.
Yeah, no, I think it was pretty striking how flat they came out, and I'll give you some inside baseball here because we were, when you're in that press row, you're right in front of the, UConn bench or to the adjacent to it. And Dan was so close to getting a technical that they gave him, you know how many final warnings he got? We counted 10. Yeah. 10 final warnings. Hey man, this is your final warning. But the beauty of it is he rotates officials. So whenever whoever's closest to him, he doesn't go at the same official. How he's gotten in trouble is he's going after the same official multiple times. He's getting a little smarter in his old age when he's trying to work the officials. He rotates. So when the furthest guy is away, he may yell at him, but then he talks, hey man, talk to that guy. You've got to see this, this, and this. And they're like, all right, yeah. So it's just funny. It's just funny to be there, especially as you're closer in Hartford than you are in Stores, to kind of see that that dynamic. But to me, the biggest thing is, and might as well just talk about it. The whistle in this game, I don't think was on the officials. I think Big East officials are not good. I'll say that. But UConn, as you've said this in the past, is pretty finesse oriented. And even with Liam in the lineup, they really weren't getting enough going to the basket, and they're relegated to basically a 3-point shooting team. Solo struggled a little bit in the first half. Alex missed a couple in the first half as well. Liam wasn't, exactly in sniper mode. He was kind of grinding out that game, and his contributions came in the second half, obviously with the great stretch. So when you don't have that, it's so difficult because the bench is so small. Like, Terrace comes in and does a great job in the second half as well. But, Dan said it in his press conference. Jalen Stewart, he said, did some silly against silly in the beginning of the game, and he put him in the doghouse essentially. So he sat like for the entire first half. And when you don't have that kind of guy that comes off the bench, or in Jalen's case last time against Villanova that started, because do you remember when the first game against Villanova, Jay is like the guy who was going. He had 10 of the 12 points. And so without that, they probably lose that game by like 15, 16 points at Villanova, because he kind of got them, righted the ship, so to speak, right? So we didn't have that. Aiden is, getting turned over in 2 seconds when he comes in the game. Jay Ross is non-existent. So what do you? I know we're talking about the negative stuff, but like in this game, what was your initial thought like in that first half going to the second half? Like, were you basically like the crowd, which was foaming at the mouth, like freaking out?
I mean, yeah, on my couch having a heart attack, screaming at the TV, absolutely in the first half. But that was a byproduct of what we were seeing and Dan Hurley was trying to figure out too. They were trying to figure out in the first half who's going to be the guy off the bench to kind of spark this team. The starting lineup can't do it every game. This is why you play 7, 8, 9 guys. Jalen Stewart came off the bench and actually had the best game off the bench of any of the 3 guys that came off. Aiden couldn't get it going in the first half. He gets turned over, misses an open 3, gets yanked in 2 minutes. He's -6. Ahmad Noel, who we've been begging, and all Twitter Nation, been begging for more playing time, finally gets healthy, gets thrown into this game. He was a -4, I believe, in his 4 minutes. Gets burned on defense twice. Quick yank. Don't see him again in the second half. So Hurley was just rotating through the guys that are ready to play, and it just didn't work out in this game. So he has to turn to Terrace Reed, who finally asserts himself in the second half. But yeah, that first half was just discovery for Dan, trying to figure out who he can go to that's going to show up in this game. And the bench just didn't show up. Stewie probably had the best game of all of them. Jaden Ross, I think, was a -6 in limited minutes as well. So 3 guys who are just not giving you anything. So he turns to Terrace Reed, who did an excellent job on Eric Dixon. Probably the only guy on our team that can match his physicality. He's got 2 inches on Dixon and matches that 260, 270 frame, and can follow him around the court. He can extend out to the almost 3-point line and not lose anything there defensively. About the free throws, UConn commits 13 fouls to Villanova 16. UConn gets 38 points in the paint in this game to Villanova 16. So I think that was where they won the game. They finally figure out how to match Villanova physically. Villanova's a big team. They've got guards up to 6'5", Wooga Poplar, who Dan Hurley sings his praises, thinks he might be a fringe first-round pick. Mm-hmm. Eric Dixon is a load, leading scorer in the nation, ends up going 3 of 13 in this game. So Terrace Reed was probably the biggest X factor in this game. He gets 13 points, I think 7 rebounds off the bench in about 25 minutes, fills it up in his limited minutes. Sampson, not really a factor in this one, just 13 minutes. He gets a yank, comes in for a few minutes in the second half, but really wasn't a factor. This was the starting 5 and Terrace Reed in this game, and a heavy dose of Liam McNeeley in the second half. Something I just want to take you through what I saw in the back half of that second half, which led to kind of this 14-point comeback. So first half, UConn goes down 8 points. They trail 34-26 going into the break. So into the second half, Alex Karaban scores all 6 of his points in the first half. 6, 4, and 4, 2 blocks, missed all 3 of his 3-point attempts. So at the 10-minute mark, this is something we haven't seen yet from Dan Hurley. 10-minute mark, UConn goes down 12. Karaban misses a layup. The 9:39 mark, UConn goes down 10. Alex misses a 3. Hurley subs out Alex Karaban, who's been playing a ton of minutes all year, like 35 to 40 every single game out of necessity. Dan subs out his guy, Alex Karaban, at the 9-minute mark. They're down 10 points. Alex doesn't return to the game until 3:49 in the second half, with UConn then down 6. So most of this comeback comes without Alex Karaban. So I don't know if there's something there that Dan saw. Alex is having another cold shooting night, but he was active. This was a lower scoring game, so it's not like Alex Karaban, who's been cold lately, was 1 of 10 in this game. He wasn't. He was doing other things, staying active, and I thought had a pretty good game and kept things like in reach. So Terrace Reed in the second half, with Sampson essentially played off the floor because of the physical nature of Villanova. Terrace provided just a ton of necessary physicality for UConn offensively. He holds Eric Dixon to 3 of 13, who they've now played twice this season. I think he's like 6 of like 30 in the 2 games against them. So they've done a really good job on their best player. The story of this comeback was Liam McNeeley, who played 39 minutes, ends up with 20 points, 16 of which came in the second half, 7 rebounds, only 2 free turnovers, and makes all 9 of his free throws. He created so much for them offensively under the 10-minute mark to kind of spark this 14-point comeback. So Liam subs out at the 10:22 mark of the second half, gets a minute breather on the bench, comes right back in. So under 9 minutes, this is what Liam McNeeley did to spark this comeback. Defensive rebound, made 3-pointer, made free throw, defensive rebound, made free throw, defensive rebound, made free throw to take the lead at 142. Assist to Terrace Reed to go up 5. Defensive rebound, made free throw to go up and ice the game with a 7-point win. He has 5 points, 5 rebounds, and goes 8 of 8 from the line to close this game out in the final 9 minutes of the game. He was the story. He's the reason we won this basketball game. Solo ball contributed with 3 threes in the second half as well, but Liam was the one that sparked this comeback. He breathed life into them. He keeps the ball moving on offense. He's a plus defender. He's our second leading rebounder now. He's less than a rebound away from being our team's leading rebounder as well. So this team has, like, in the second half of the season where Alex Karaban's gone cold shooting, Liam has kind of just been the spark for them offensively and just kept things moving. They're, like you said, they were already a finesse style team. They became even more so when he went out for 8 games with that ankle injury. Thankfully, he's back to kind of salvage this season, because I would hate to see where they'd be without him.
Yeah, they'd probably be playing in the Crown. Is what I would tell you. But it's so funny you mentioned this stuff, because we've had Evan Miyakawa on before, and I don't know if you saw this, but this is something that Ryan Hammer, who we've also had on the show, put out on his behalf, that there's a group of teams right now that have the most kill shots and have more of a propensity to go on runs and sustain them. And it may surprise you to see that UConn is on this list right here. They're right in that fringe. These teams are teams that go on scoring runs. UConn, Wisconsin, Arizona, Alabama, New Mexico, Auburn, St. John's, Memphis, Duke, Florida, Houston, kind of fringe, kind of touching that area, Missouri and SMU. And that's pretty encouraging, because if you look at last year, the only teams that were tournament teams that go on scoring runs were UConn, Carolina, Marquette, St. Mary's, BYU, Arizona, Auburn, Iowa State, and Gonzaga. Obviously different teams, but could be a correlative factor, because UConn does have this ability. And as we've talked about, they also have an ability that they don't, I'm knocking on wood because I don't want it to happen, they never get blown out, dude. They just don't.
Yep.
They're always in the game because of the way their style of play. And just wanted to show those two metrics there before we move on.
And I wish I could ask that to Hurley and his staff, if that was the way their tempo is one of the slowest in the country. They're a half court team. Like even when they get out on the break, they're not getting dunks and and breakaway layups. Like they tend to screw it up when they get on a fast break. I wish I could ask this staff if that were by design. Like, are you playing slow because you see something analytically or in the metrics that lends you to believe that you think you have something here that keeps these games low scoring enough because you think that you might not be able to score high into the 80s? This team has gone 8 straight games. Excuse me. UConn has only scored 80 points once in their last 11 games. They're 6-5 in those games, and their defense is keeping this low scoring, and that's kind of why they're staying in these games.
What I was going to say is, like, I can ask that question next time, and I think part of that is I think I know the answer. I think the answer is even last year's team, which was historically good, it creates a bulletproof part of basketball where if you're going on these scoring runs, like they went on a ton of those last year, not as many this year, and you're playing good defense and your tempo is slow, there's not enough possessions for the other team to come back. So like that to me is the analytical answer, is which and when you're not as talented, it keeps you in games closer. And we've talked about this. It's why you'll see mid majors kind of give you a little token pressure just to kind of slow the game down. And UConn right now is a better defensive team lately, but that's part of it too, is like they don't want to run as much because they can go on these 14-1 scoring runs as much as they want. But if they go on droughts and their defense is playing poorly, then they don't allow a team to go on these extended runs like Illinois did last year. That 30-0 run we all remember. All right, this is the longest episode in Locked On UConn history. We're coming up on 17 minutes. We're going to take a quick break, talk about an ad, and with our friends at FanDuel, and then we'll be back to talk about St. John's in Store South after this. When the game tips off, the action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or you want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for even bigger wins. I love using FanDuel for live betting because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my own team, obviously with UConn, or a late game rally, or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I feel like I never miss any chance. Plus, the app is easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Join FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn. Let's get Dan back in here and unmute him. All right. So look, got St. John's, Store South. I can answer one of the questions you talked about with Alex. In the press conference, Dan said they asked him, I forget who asked the question, did you see something with Alex? And he said, honestly, he just looked down at the bench and said to the guys, how many minutes has Alex played? And they said all of them. And so that's why he got out. That wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, it wasn't a performance thing. But let's start there. I didn't think Alex played poor. I thought he played his typical leadership game, right? Where he was on the guys. He was making sure guys like Terrace, who had the big assignment with Eric Dixon, that he didn't fall for pump fakes, as Dan said to me in my question to him in the press conference. We'll see if we can kind of put that on the air here in a second, where, they felt like that was the best matchup because of Terrace's size. And I asked him about that, and he said, yes, obviously. But Alex was doing his thing, man. I thought Haas was really was assertive, looked as healthy as he's been in a while. He said so in the press conference as well. So, but let's start with Alex. Like, what did you see from him? And, I want him to keep shooting, man. Like he gave up a couple of open shots, and I get it. Your team's rolling. Maybe you feel like you're not, and you want to, pass it along, pass it forward. But I want him to keep shooting. That's my mentality, and it should be his.
We don't have any other choice. He's one of our best players. This team, he's one of the engines that makes this machine go. I would hate to see what this team would look like without Alex Karaban. So we have no choice. He needs to just keep shooting the basketball. Hope some of these start to go in. I I don't know if he's changed anything with his shot. I don't see a hitch in his shot or anything.
Nah.
I just think this is maybe a confidence issue, but the only way to get out of that is to just keep shooting. I saw some funny things online, like different things you can try to do to get out of a shooting slump, but he's just got to keep going. Luckily for him, Liam McNeeley, who keeps the ball moving and gets other guys involved, is back now and has been inserted back into this offense and breathing life back into it, keeping the ball moving, getting to the line. So that kind of just frees Alex in his his responsibilities with the ball in his hand up. So he can kind of just like do what he's more naturally fit to do, moving without the ball, sending screens. His passing has still been there. Like he's still getting it in the lane. Those drop off passes to Terrace and Sampson are still there. He's just got to keep playing basketball. This team, the ceiling of this team is higher when he is playing well. So listen, Dan Hurley ain't gonna yank this guy. We don't have the horses off the bench and the luxury like we have in the years past where he can kind of only play 15, 20 minutes. We don't have that luxury. We tried to go to the bench in this game against Villanova. 3 guys came in. Aiden, Jalen played okay, but Jaden Ross, Aiden Mahaney, and Ahmad Noel were non-factors in this game in the first half. So that's why Alex played every single minute of the first half. Like you said, he comes out during the time where UConn goes on this run, from like kind of a 10-minute to 4-minute mark in the second half. He hadn't come out of the game until then. He played 35 minutes in this one. Those are the only 5 minutes that he comes out of the game. Just so happens to be maybe they get more athletic on the court. I don't know why that was when they made the comeback with him off the court. I'm not going to read too much into it. This team and the ceiling of this team is higher when he's on the court.
Yeah, I'm going to play a video here, but he said in the presser that, we asked about the press a little bit, and, he said, it's harder to do consistently when you don't have guys like Jalen out there, who's kind of gives you more of an athletic and rangy, longer reach type guy. He's like, I wouldn't do it with Alex and Liam and, like Aiden, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So
yep.
It's just
correct.
This is I think this is a video. I'm trying to remember which one this is.
The resilience and having to carry so much weight and having to make
this is about Liam
plays.
So to give some context, this is about Liam being essentially he's saying he's the most impactful freshman in the country because of the pressure, right? You know what I mean? Like you can say
yep.
Cooper Flagg is better, but he basically says if Liam doesn't play well, UConn typically doesn't win.
Having to be a two-way player and having to, he's our second leading rebounder by a little bit. He's got the ball in his hands now. Now that he's back, we've got a guy we can get the ball to late in the game that could go make a play. So that certainly helps a lot.
Coach, I asked this question about Terrace. So this is the beginning of that. This goes to the Eric Dixon matchup and why it mattered, because I thought it was going to be about the size, like weighing on Eric versus you put a guy like Jalen on him. He may do a good job early, but he's fresh. Like at the end of the game, he'd be able to kind of handle it.
Eric Dixon, like you said, leading scorer in the country, held him to more of a volume shooter, 3 of 13. He was 9 of 12 from the free throw line, 17 points. But was Terrace, was that a concerted effort to kind of get his weight on him to kind of maybe bog him down for the rest of the game, so at the end he wasn't as fresh?
Yeah, I mean we screwed up a couple switches with him where he got some pick and pop threes in the first half, Mark, and just Terrace is got just a great combination of physical strength and agility.
You guys get it. I don't know if you caught that. He called me by my first name, and I was like, he knows who I am.
Proud moment for you.
It was a proud moment for a stupid podcaster. Yeah, it was one of those things where I was just like, did he?
Do you have a little name placard in front of you?
Nope.
Or he knew you by heart? He remembered you?
Yeah.
Tip of the cap.
Yep. Yep. I was just like, woof. Okay, Dan, take it easy, buddy. It's only our second time together.
I don't want to wake up pregnant. Slow down.
Yeah, exactly. No, listen. I one of the things I say about him all the time is he's win or lose. He's always great in the press conference. Like win or lose, like he's in a better mood when they win. Clearly, but if that's
it's not Bill Belichick up there. He's gonna answer your question.
Yeah, exactly. If there's one thing I'll give, all the narrative about him being an a-hole and all this other stuff, like he's phenomenal with the press. I'm sorry, like he just is. From my lowly self to, Dom Amore, who's been there for 100 years, to Dave Borges, who's been there for 20, and, whoever, Joe D'Ambrosio, whoever, Ian O'Connor, who's running a book on him, whoever's asking a question, he gives them the exact same respect as you should. No one's above anyone, like in his eyes. And I think that's pretty, I mean, you can tell when he's kind of like, like that question really didn't move him, but he still answers it. Like he's not like that was stupid. Like he may think it, but back to the game. Like I think the beauty of this team at times, it's also kind of the nightmare of it, which is, they have a good 6 to 7 guys. 8, maybe you can say maybe 8 if Jay Ross is having a game, which he hasn't had in a while. But guys who basically just haven't developed the way that Dan has wanted. And he's being forced to kind of have a rotation that he doesn't typically want. And I will give, we wanted Ahmad Noel out there. I know defensively he struggled a little bit, but I think for me, like, if you haven't played in a month, I wanted to see him play. There's like one criticism is I would have liked to have seen him got like 7 or 8 minutes, just an extended run to kind of just pick. At that point, it's like you don't have a ton of other options.
The problem with that is and this is something that happens when guys get injured, is it makes it tougher to elevate them later in the season. We need all of these wins. This isn't like last year where you've got 25 wins coming into the final 5 games of the season. You can't lose this game.
Right. But my point about saying that is not like you're not like sacrificing the win just to get him run. That's not what I'm saying.
Earlier in the season, you might be able to do that.
Yeah.
Now
you
can't play with us. Yeah. No. I know. I'm just saying we want to see this guy out there. It's just, we gave you 5-6 minutes in the first half. Those few possessions didn't work out. And sure. And now we're down 8 going into halftime against a team in the middle of the conference. You got to do something like, so I don't want to play Alex Karaban 40 minutes. I have to keep him out there to win this basketball game.
But only pushback I give you on that is if we're talking defensively, on the offensive side, he missed one shot, which was a good looking shot. He missed it, just back iron. And when he got pressed on that double, because they were like, oh, freshman, blood in the water, whatever. He didn't panic. He threw it to the open man, which led to a layup for Liam on the back end of that. It was almost like a hockey assist. So I'd much rather see my point of this is, and people are going to be like, whoa, he said something. I'm not saying anything negative about Aiden, but Aiden shouldn't play over him. That's my thought process. Like,
I think that much is clear now.
I think the only pushback on Dan or any of the coaching staff in this is they went with Aiden too long. And now it feels like they have to before they even think about Ahmad. I think Ahmad needs to be ahead of him if going forward. Just like, hey, man, we need you. This, keep practicing hard. If he keeps having good practices, maybe that will happen. But it's just hard to kind of say that it, didn't work out for him when he hasn't played in a month and he played 3 minutes. It's like, what would do?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything. It's just playing time, and there's been 3 or 4 games where Aiden's played pretty well throughout this season, and he just stayed healthy. So he's obviously going to get the nod off the bench and be above a freshman on the depth chart in that regard. So I think you got 5 games left in this season where you can try to get as much as you're going to out of a freshman point guard and Ahmad Noel. They've got games against Marquette, St. John's. I don't know how much he's going to play in this. I don't think he's going to play a whole lot in this game at MSG on Sunday against, the second best defensive rated team in the country. I don't think he's going to get a whole lot of minutes in this one. You're going to see 35 to 40 minute totals from the starting 5 across the board in this one. Aiden, I think, comes off the bench above Ahmad in this game. I just don't think Ahmad Noel is ready to play against an attack defense with size. I don't think, I'm not saying Aiden Mahaney is the better player, but I just trust him with the ball in his hands a little bit more right now than a freshman. We'll see.
I don't trust Aiden with the ball right now. I think Aiden, like I said, Aiden reminds me of when I felt like I played when I was like a young kid, and I was like, my handle is really bad, but if I get open, I can shoot. But like I shouldn't have the ball.
Coulda, shoulda.
So I think for me that's I feel like anxiety when he has the ball, because I've been in that situation where you're like, I can't dribble.
Yeah, I think if they had if human beings didn't get tired, I don't think that they would ever come in the game
Right.
because UConn just can't afford to go to the bench right now. Like they need all these wins, and when they are going to the bench, that's where they're
Right.
losing the lead in these games. But you got to get guys to blow every once in a while.
For sure.
Amon Noel, Alex Karaban, and Liam McNeeley are playing too many minutes. It is out of pure
Come on,
necessity.
Hassan. You said Ahmad, but I know you meant Hassan. Yeah.
Sorry, Hassan.
Yeah. No worries. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. No ads. We're gonna come back and talk about St. John's. We're gonna talk about the brackets where they are right now, and also this question: can this win ... lead to? We've asked that question quite often this year. Coming up after the break. All right, back on Locked On UConn with Dan Meehan, owner, founder, Exit 68, and me, of course, Mark Snetto of Locked On UConn. All right, so here's the deal. Play St. John's. Rick Pitino is already up to his chicanery, like always, with him saying, "Well, RJ Lewis is doubtful." Yeah, I joked around on his behalf. I tweeted out, "I'm doubtful for the podcast today," but we all know that I'm going to do like 2. So, like, if he doesn't play, cool, good, great break for UConn. But I mean, he's playing, dude. Like, don't let my friend Brian Gaffey, who's out in LA, tweeted out and said, "Does St. John's have to ship out Rick Pitino's casket before the game to make sure that he doesn't have any light exposure before when they have day games?" So Tricky Ricky is either a vampire or he's a dastardly dude. Great coach, but just a really interesting, not likable guy.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been watching this feature that Vice is doing on St. John's. It's called Pitino Red Storm Rising. I've had 2 episodes so far. The second episode was one of the best episodes of anything I've watched recently. I'm a basketball junkie, so as much as I hate, the other teams in the Big East and want them to lose, this has been a fascinating story to tell.
Sure.
He's been there 2 years now. They're doing little to no high school recruiting. They're acquiring through the transfer portal, and he's just building. It sounds like he's invested in building this program up and trying to, gain more facilities and NIL money for them. They found something here. But yeah, this second episode, it's funny because he's done this 2 or 3 different times just this season where it's not even like finesse. Like it's obvious that what he's doing is like, oh yeah, that guy's not going to play. Like, so St. John's wins their last game. Oh yeah, RJ's not playing on Sunday against UConn. Like what? Like the game's in 4 days. Calm down. He did it against Creighton 4 days ago. He says their point guard who's had a shoulder and neck injury, Davon Smith, says he's going to miss the final 8 games of the season last week. He plays 1 game later against Creighton. They get the win, and Davon Smith plays 26 minutes, like was a seminal player for them in that win. Doug McDermott was not happy after the game. He was respectful with his remarks, but he was not happy. But another instance of this, the second game. So in the second episode of that Vice feature, they feature the game where they play his son Richard Pitino at Madison Square Garden against New Mexico State, and him and his son go out for a cocktail at the Park Avenue Tavern the night before the game, drinking cocktails, and his son just goes, "So what do you guys, what's it going to look like tomorrow?" He goes, "Kadari Richmond is injured," and his son Richard just looks at him and goes, "No, he's not. No, he's not." His own son doesn't even buy into his BS. So
yeah.
RJ Lewis will play in this game. He's their leading scorer, almost 18 points a game. I would be shocked if he does not play in this one.
Yeah, and he also just sat out the DePaul game where they won by like 30. So, like that was the reason why he's probably going to play against UConn, because they sat him this game. Maybe he's diminished, maybe he's hobbled a little bit. Cool, good for us. But I'm not expecting anything to be, other than what it is. All right. They play in MSG at noon, kind of a not an odd start, but it's 12 o'clock on a Sunday. So I think it's an awesome, fun game. I wish I was going. The initial plan was to go, but now I cannot. But that's okay. My question to you is: have you seen where UConn is right now in the brackets?
Yeah. So on our buddy Evan Mia's kind of team resume feature on his website, which is great. A lot of people are already starting to look towards that because he weights every win for a team and loss. UConn's wins do not outweigh their bad losses. So right now he's got them projected as a 9-10 seed. I think they end up getting in as a 7 or 8 ultimately, but we'll see. They still got these next 5 games are going to be really important for them. I haven't seen Mike DeCourcy's. He had them as an 8 seed in the Auburn region last week. So I'm not sure if they're still there, but yeah, that's kind of where they are right now. They're between 8. They're not even being projected anywhere as a 7 right now. They're between. I think they can get there if they play these final 5 games really well. They're not a lock to make the tournament, but if you get this win on Sunday against a top 10 team in St. John's, you're pretty much guaranteed to get into the tournament.
What do you consider a lock?
I think they're probably locked in anywhere between an 8 and a 10 seed right now.
Right. For me, I think they're a lock to get in the tournament because, as of today, right now, if things change, if they lose, I sent a message. I had someone reach out to me and say, what do you think the chances of this is what I sent to a fan of the show. I said, if they're 3-3 down the stretch, they're somewhere between a 10 and 11 seed. If they're 4-2, I think they're a 7-8 seed. If they go 5-1 down the stretch, that this is without, considering they just won the Villanova game, I think there's a potential to be a 6 or 7 seed. I said if they go undefeated and then into the Big East tournament, then I think they've solidified a 6 seed. And then we see what happens off of the Big East tournament, right? So I think there's a lot of variables left because all of these games there's not every game. The Georgetown Seton Hall game should be wins. Those should be your 3. Those should be your 3-3.
Yes.
So if you lose St. John's, if you lose against Creighton, against Marquette, and then who was the other one? Is it? There's one more down the stretch, or am I getting an extra one in there? Either way, you can't lose. You can't lose to Georgetown or Seton Hall. The Villanova game was kind of 50-50, right? And
all these games are 50-50. That's the problem.
But you know what I mean?
You can't pencil in any of these wins for this team. They just haven't earned that.
You know what I'm saying? I think for me, I don't think they're going to get anything above. I love Evan, and I hope he comes back on the show to talk about what eventually I think will be the metric that they weight things on. But nobody in the selection committee is really is taking that weighted resume yet seriously. They're all going off of net. They're all going off different analytics, Ken Palm, Bart Torvak, things like that. I think for me, the 3 spots that I look at Lenardi, who's usually pretty good. He's got them as an 8. My buddy Rocco Miller out west has them as an 8 seed. They both have them in the East region as an 8 seed opposite Duke on the other side, which would be pretty cool for me, seeing as how it's in Raleigh. But also because I think that's kind of a fun thing. If this team is not going to be, the factor that we thought it was going to be in this 3-peat conversation, it'd be pretty fun to get a run at Cooper Flag and Duke in the second
100%.
round. If they can get
or Auburn. I'll take either one. I'd rather play Duke than Auburn, but yeah, be fun.
Yeah, I mean, listen, let's face it. Arkansas just went to Auburn and almost beat them on the road in a non-neutral site. So anything's possible in this tournament. Kansas went to BYU, and I know they seem checked out, but they lost by 40.
Blown out.
It's just so to anyone that says, "Oh, this UConn team can't do this," it's guys, I don't think you watch enough college basketball. College basketball is loaded with talent all over the place. But there's not a lot of great teams. There's too much turnover. Anything can happen.
Yeah, I think there's 2 great teams in this field. And it might only be one. I think it's Auburn, who is undeniable. They have one of arguably the greatest regular season resume in the history of college basketball. Yeah. I think they have 14 quad 1 wins, which is just ridiculous. They played everybody. They beat everybody. Their strength of schedule on Ken Palm is number 1, and the teams that they've played offensively, number 1 in the country, defensively, number 1 in the country. They've played everyone, they've beat everyone, they earned that overall number 1 seed. Even if they cough up a game or 2, I still think they should be the overall number 1 seed. Duke will be the 1 seed as well. The ACC, not a great conference, but they beat up on everybody, and they've really hit a stride recently. Their defense is locked down. Cooper Flagg has become an incredible player in the second half of the season. And then I think it's up for grabs. Those final 2 number 1 seeds. It'll probably be Bama and maybe Tennessee or another team squeezes in there. But like you said, this is a lot of these SEC teams outside of Auburn and Alabama, who's starting to show a few chinks in their armor defensively as the season plays on. That will continue. That team is not. They weren't strong last year defensively. They play in these run and gun games into the 90s and 100-point range, and they're just more apt for losses. And they get a few more losses the rest of the way, but that's still a really good team. But outside of it, some of these SEC teams are starting to stack up some losses, 6, 7, 8, 9 losses. UConn can still play their way into a 6, 7 seed and try to get a beneficial kind of run in whatever region that they end up being in.
Do you to use a quote from Dan, do you think this win galvanizes this group a little bit, or do you think they're still a little too bipolar?
I'm a little pessimistic in that regard. This team hasn't shown anything. Like, they have no good stretch during the season. Outside of that Gonzaga, Baylor, Texas run, those wins don't look as good as they do this year. Like, they've just been up and down all year.
I'm gonna. It's a good point, but did you know that the Colorado game has been up to a quad 2? So that's not.
Is Colorado 11 and
it all helps.
Sure, in the metrics, sure. But that team ended up. We thought that would at least be a 500 team. I think they're 11 and 16 as of today. Like,
also in the Big 12, the Big 12 is SEC may be the everyone's talking them up, but the Big 12 is a gauntlet too, dude. Like, I know Kansas is dog shit this year, but I honestly
they've got great wins. They've got really good wins. It's the only thing that's kept them in the top 25.
That's the thing, man. Like, I think what hurts UConn, and I love the conference. I don't want to hear about like how I hate the Big East. I hate what it's done to UConn's because the only reason why I like the Big East is because UConn is in it. It's like, I mean, like, I don't understand. Like, if UConn left the Big East, I'd still kind of pay attention to it because I like college basketball, but I would automatically start to jump on like the Big 12 stuff or another conference, whether it's called something different. Like, the Big East is 100% to blame for, and UConn themselves. But that's a big part of it. If you're in the Big 12 or the SEC and you lose a conference game to an under 500 team, it doesn't hurt. It just doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why UConn's bad losses outweigh their wins. To answer your question, I'm not looking at Bart Torvik's stats. I'm not looking at Ken Palm's stats. I'm not looking at the net. Like, you can go try to add up. Oh, that game's a quad 1, move to quad 2 now. That's going to help. I am looking within. This team has its own issues that they need to work on. I'm not. They've got 5 games to go. I think this is the final last stride. Start with St. John's, a top 10 team. It's the number 2 defensive rated team in the country. They've played. I still think St. John's has played a little bit above their pay grade, and they're due for a loss. This would be a really nice resume builder if you are going to play yourself into that 7-8 seed range. Start here on Sunday. But yeah, UConn has one final 5-game stretch where they can carve out a little run of themselves, show themselves something that they can play with the best teams for a 4 or 5 game stretch. Like, they just had win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. Like, they haven't had any one stretch since that final last 3 games of the out-of-conference portion of the schedule where they've been able to kind of carve out 3 wins in a row and say, hey, we're on a run here. We're on a roll. We found something. Like, they know who this team is now. They've just got to string together 3-4 wins in a row and get some confidence brewing as they go into the Big East tournament and then ultimately the national tournament.
Without a doubt. I'm just going to do a little light reading here in a minute, and then we'll move forward. Shout out to Shabazz Napier and the 2014 national champions. All right, this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, for Dan Meehan, owner, founder of Exit 68. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully we'll keep kind of pushing, and UConn will always, we'll always do a live reaction show as long as I'm not in the building. So that will be happening on Sunday. So I look forward to that. And as always, go Huskies.
Go Huskies.